My name is Lori Stone. I'm the local state representative for the new 13th House District. I am serving in my third term. The last two terms I represented the 28th House District, which included Eastern, Western Warren, and all of Centerline. The new 13th includes Warren from roughly Hoover to Hayes, 8 mile to 14 mile, and then pretty much from City Airport to Gratiot all the way down to 94. And so I am enjoying getting to know the new district. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am and what I bring to the state legislature. I'm a teacher of more than 14 and a half years. I taught elementary school for Fitzgerald Public Schools, most of that at Mound Park Elementary. And that was largely my motivation to run, was when we had deep cuts to education funding. We saw that send ripples out into our classrooms, cuts to staff, cuts to resources. Our districts were hemorrhaging dollars. And at a certain point when I felt no one else was listening, I said, I can do this. I can do better. So I decided to add my voice to the state legislature. I did my student teaching in DPS down at Bellevue Elementary. Two amazing mentor teachers in upper elementary. A great experience that I took with me and made me a better teacher because of it. I do community conversations once a month. This is for transparency, accountability, and communications. As your representative in Lansing, it is important that you know what's going on, get your questions answered, and have a voice in government. So roughly the third Saturday of every month, I set aside from 11 a.m. to noon at various locations throughout the 13th House District. So in my previous position, I had a variety of libraries and community locations that I tapped into. So I'm still learning the new 13th. I'm so grateful that Franklin Library opened their doors. We so appreciate having this public space to have these conversations. Upcoming next in April, we'll be located at Tim Hortons on Hoover Road, just south of 696. They have also graciously created a public space. Come on in. May 20th, July 15th, June's date fell off, and August, in the summer, I do summer picnics with resource partners. So currently I have reserved Arthur Miller Park in Warren, July 15th. One of those will be at J.C. Park in Warren, and I'm working to reserve Wishegan Park just down the road. Beautiful park, lots of space. In my experience, previously I just navigated Macomb County and Warren and Centerline governments. So Detroit has been a juggernaut to learn to navigate Wayne County. So I'm doing my best to learn all my community. When you reach out to my staff, my legislative director is Dawn Jakubowski. She has been with me for 4 years, and I've known her for many more beyond that. She started out as a constituent director, so she knows the whole process beginning to end. I have a new gentleman, Devin Dudley, who started as constituent director this term. These are usually the first people when you pick up the phone, send an email, they're right there serving needs. In addition, I usually take on 1 to 4 interns as a teacher at heart. For me, this position just extends the opportunity to be a teacher. It gives college students primarily firsthand experience in the legislature, opportunity to assist in our district office, the opportunity to help coordinate community events and outreach, the opportunity to explore policy, and attend committee meetings in session. So if you know of any students, a lot of times it's MSU students and Lansing Community College students because of proximity, but I've also had students from U of M and other communities, organizations that have wanted this position. ground rules. What is a community conversation? What is it not? Community conversations are your regular updates of what your elected officials are working on in Lansing and locally. It is an opportunity for transparency and accountability, and it is not a public debate. We do share positions and reasoning, and it is a respectful place for civil discourse. I often have gotten over the years, I can't bother you, you're too important. So I've added to this spiel, what is your state representative? What is this position and how is it served best? So your state representative is your customer service agent in Lansing for state government. When you need to navigate governmental bureaucracy, call for assistance with departments like unemployment, MDHHS, and UIA. I serve everyone in our community regardless of party. I ask, how can I help? Not who do you vote for? My responsibility is to deliberate on policy in committees, asking questions, probing, make sure it's responsible policy, make sure what is the impact on my community. We are commonly thought of as lawmakers. We do create policy, we serve on committees, we vote on policy, we weigh in on how budgets are created and spent. But we also provide information. We also connect community with resources. I do this through community conversations once a month, mailings periodically, e-newsletters once a month, town halls on a variety of topics, roundtables and discussions on issues, attending community events, visiting local businesses and organizations. A big piece is advocating for our community needs, and because of that, I'm more effective when I hear from community members. So I appreciate having you here to have the conversation, but whether it's through emails, calls, visits to the Capitol, hearing from you helps me better perform. I also have the privilege of providing recognitions like legislative tributes for milestone birthdays, anniversaries, significant community or business events. So if you know of something, please reach out or encourage someone else in the community to reach out so we can be a part of that and uplift. I also serve as a guest speaker for ceremonies, community events, local organizations, schools, and scout groups. Just this week, I participated in the Ann Arbor alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Inc. In an education conversation about the third grade reading law, which was a personal passion of mine and a priority since I got to Lansing just over 4 years ago. And I'm so excited that we are finally getting it over the finish line. So I always do a portion on legislative updates, in-district updates, and then open the floor to questions and answers. It's helpful to know that I serve on the Education Policy Committee, and I have for 3 terms. My background in education has prepared me well, and it's where I see myself best as a voice in the legislature. I've served on Financial Services Committee first term, Insurance Committee second term, and now they've combined them to the the Insurance and Financial Services Committee for my 3rd term. And so coming into this assignment for a committee, I wasn't sure what business I had in this area other than being a consumer of insurance, but it has been a big educational opportunity to look at insurance through a variety of lenses. I serve on the Military and Veterans Services and Homeland Security Committee. This is the 1st term, and I'm learning a lot. Agriculture, and I said there hasn't been a farm in Warren since the 70s. So what does my voice add to this? Who am I advocating for? And in our first presentations from Department of Agriculture, they need more farmers, and farmers in every aspect. And so they have lots of programs that they're pushing out to the community, including with 4-H and MSU Extension. to give our youth those opportunities. When I was in school, we used to go to the farm in kindergarten and first grade and see what it was like. And we've dropped off a lot of those firsthand experiential learning opportunities for our classrooms. And so helping connect the agricultural community, which is largely rural, although we've seen more urban, with our classroom instructors and make sure that they have resources. So when the kids are considering their future opportunities, we have kids who like to play in the dirt. We have kids who like to work in gardens. And every child should consider every career possibility. So I'm learning a lot about agriculture. We also have a special subcommittee on affordable housing, which is critical shortage across the state of Michigan, whether it's urban, suburban, recreational, whether it's tourist locations. We've had some really good presentations from MISHDA, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, and they brought a lot of programs to my attention, and I'm not sure how well they're being utilized throughout our district. So it's something that I'm working on. I'm part of many caucuses. I call them my after-school clubs. Caucuses are when legislative members and staff collaborate to develop policy on specific issue areas. Often organized around common interests, combined efforts. I think of it sometimes like a union. We're stronger together. The more voices you add to an issue, the more powerful and the more potential it is to move through these issues. But it's also educational. It's an opportunity to bring speakers, representatives from organizations who are local experts on these issues, and make sure, a lot of people think once we're elected, we're omnipotent beings, that we just know everything. And we have a lot of voices that bring a lot of experience, but each of us have our niche, and there's a lot of things we don't know about. So it's very important that we continue to educate ourselves on issues that we care about. So I am the chairperson of the Education Caucus. I'm part of the Poverty and Homelessness Caucus and chairperson on the subcommittee on youth homelessness. And I've developed a bipartisan package of bills that came out of some of the speakers we had last term. I'm part of the Detroit Caucus. I am part of the Progressive Women's Caucus, the Legislative Labor Caucus for Workers' Rights and Unions. I was a union member for MEA through the Fitzgerald Education Association. I was a building representative through some of our crisis, and I'm an advocate for workers' rights. I'm part of the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus. As an educator, I led active shooter drills for 9 and 10-year-olds. I've lived through many of these issues that are happening over and over again, and it's something that we continue to have to work on. I'm part of the Automotive Caucus, the Aerospace and Defense Caucus, the Cancer Caucus. Having lost my mom to cancer when I was 16 made me an active advocate for the American Cancer Society and active in the Relay for Life of Warren for many years, and working on healthcare prevention, research, treatment, and survivorship for cancer. Disability, I'm part of the Disability Caucus and around improving ADA standards. And one of my places of advocacy, a parent of a young autistic child really brought to me and sold me on my heart, was around universal height adjustable changing tables. I don't think it's something that most people think about. When a child ages out of an infant changing table but still has diapering needs, what happens? And it even goes into our seniors. Many of them are relegated to changing themselves or their child on dirty, unhygienic bathroom floors. Some are changing themselves in the back of minivans and parking lots, exposed. And so this is equipment that slowly is being adopted, incorporated, and normalized. And it serves a variety of people. So I've worked on some grants to help community organizations install this equipment. And I'm just excited to raise awareness around it. I'm part of the LGBTQ caucus as an ally. I'm part of the Environmental Justice Caucus, the Asian Pacific American Caucus, Creative Arts Caucus, having been involved with the local civic theater and the symphony, Warren Symphony Orchestra. I'm also part of the Sportsmen's Caucus and the MSU Spartans Caucus. And before you go, when do you have time to go to committee, take a meeting? These are not weekly meetings. These are periodically, sometimes quarterly meetings. But they are, just to give you a little snapshot of kind of what are the buckets that I'm involved in. And so if you have shared interests in any of those areas, please let me know. First 10 weeks. It's been epic and eventful. Like I said, this is my start of my third term, and it feels almost 3 months in like we've been going for 6 months. On the positive note, I feel that issues that I care about are moving at a record pace, and issues that have been sidelined and frustrated for are serving the minority is educational. I think I've become a better legislator because you have to work across the aisle, develop common ground, compromise, and negotiate. But I'll tell you it's more fun serving in the majority and setting the agenda. Just saying. On Thursday, Governor Whitmer signed into law the equal civil rights protections for Michigan's LGBTQ residents as part of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. It's groundbreaking, and it's amazing. And we stand on the shoulders of people who have worked for decades to get this legislation across the line. So I lift that up because, well, I get to be at this turning point after 40 years where agendas have been set by the Republican majority. I also recognize all the people who came before me who got it to this point. The Senate passed a package of gun violence prevention legislation. Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was in Michigan to lead community and advocacy endeavors. The House did universal background checks first, but they did pass safe storage and extreme risk protection orders, also known as ERPO, E-R-P-O, or red flag laws. These provide a due process for which individuals who are a threat to themselves or others family can petition the courts to have guns removed or firearms removed from homes. We know that the biggest threat from firearms is suicide. And we know that often suicide is in something that people do on an urge. And as quickly as 15 or 20 minutes, people have that pass. But when people have a lethal firearm in the house, that can be deadly and there's no coming back from that. So of these three packages, universal background checks has 88% support publicly, including gun owners. Safe storage has over 70% support, including gun owners. Extreme risk protection orders is probably one of the more controversial that we've taken up, but also is very popular and it really gets at the heart. Some people say, well, can you guarantee if you pass these that there's not going to be another school shooting? No. Can you guarantee that there's not going to be another mass shooting at a church or at my grocery store? No. But we know that in communities where these are in effect, there's lower instances of shootings, lower instances of suicides by gun. And so these are valuable, and we will continue to work and make sure, a big piece is making sure the legislation has the right wording in it so it is defensible in the Michigan Supreme Court, because they will most definitely be challenged. Can we agree that anyone who exercises their rights to bear arms has a fundamental responsibility? Gun owners agree that owning guns come with responsibilities, and these are not asking for additional. We're just asking for universal. So you already have to have a universal background check to own a pistol. But can we agree that a rifle and a long gun should be treated the same? You already have to, you're expected to be storing your guns safely. I come from a family of hunters and sportsmen, and the first thing you learn is how to store your guns safely. And so we just want to make sure that it's universal. We started this term with $6 billion in revenue surplus, and we know that comes from largely the inflationary prices on items. So one of the priorities that I've advocated for, is an earned income tax credit or working families tax credit, and we moved it from 6% to 30%. That's going to make a record impact on wallets and budgets for families that need it most. We've also repealed the senior retirement pension tax. Now that has lots of layers, but it could increase home budgets by almost $100 a month, up to $1,000 a year. And this includes both pensions, IRAs, and 401ks to help fixed incomes go further. HB House Bill 4004-4005 restored workers' rights to organize, unionize, collectively bargain the value of their labor by repealing right to work legislation. In 2012, we closed down Fitzgerald Public Schools to go protest in Lansing. I was there. Unfortunately, it was rammed through in the middle of the night. And so it's very sweet to be here for the repeal. House Bill 4007 restores prevailing wage, making sure that contractors provide workers they don't sacrifice wages to underbid on contracts. We have also repealed Michigan's 1931 antiquated abortion law because it contradicts the constitutional amendment that Michigan voters adopted in November that guarantees access to safe abortion health care. Those are the general legislative priorities, but I have some of my own personal priorities that I'd like to give updates on where they are in the process. So I provided testimony in committee and spoke on the floor on the repeal of the retention of third grade students. And I will be participating in the signing ceremony March 22nd with Governor Whitmer. I have a package that I mentioned on youth homelessness. It's a bipartisan effort that I've worked with my colleagues on. And we are seeking a committee hearing with the Family, Children, and Seniors chairperson. The three bills include extending the window to secure permission to serve homeless youth. Currently it's 24 hours. The federal guidelines are up to 72 hours. And our community partners that provide this service have explained one of the biggest challenges is a lot of our homeless youth are not seeking formal services from shelters because at 24 hours, if they cannot secure permission from a parent, they're referred to Child Protective Services and often lose their autonomy. And the shelter providers have explained that, well, number one, their priority when it's safe is the unification of families. However, often when youth leave their home, it can be under very explosive circumstances. They may also be homeless and not occupying a residence with their legal guardians. So they may be couch surfing on the streets, and it takes a shelter a while to find relevant contact information and then often de-escalating family dynamics. And so they said they would really appreciate if Michigan comes into alignment with the federal government guidance, which is that 72-hour window. They believe that within 72 hours that they can secure permission for most of the parents, which would take vulnerable youth off the streets with the potential for exploitation for human trafficking and put them into a formal shelter program for youth where they're protected, they have adults looking out for them, and they have access to services and well-being. Good morning, come on in if you'd like to join us. Oh, sorry, go right ahead. The second bill is around redefining residential definition for the purpose of transitional services out of care to independent adults. So when Michigan got in trouble for housing youth with adults in corrections, they do what government often does, which is an overcorrection, and instead of addressing the specific population, which created an issue. We have contracts with providers who help youth when they're aging out of the system from 17 to 21, develop those independent skills. And right now we house youth, well, not currently, but we typically house 17 to 21-year-olds together. They're in often separate wings of the same facility. They get the same services. And they are served by the same providers. Well, currently these providers are being told you have to buy a second building, and that's a problem because that's not what they're funded for. And so the state of Michigan is out of compliance, and the federal government allows for youth for the purposes of transitional services to be housed in the same facility. So when we tried to fix one problem, we just created another. So trying to be thoughtful about making sure that we have those lined up. The third bill in this package allows access to medical services to homeless minors. So currently, if a youth leaves home, and even if they're seeking services from a formal shelter system for youth, if they cannot get parents to sign on to permission for every medical procedure, sometimes they don't get care for 2 and 3 years, unless it's emergent. And so I've talked with homeless youth, and you know, it's a problem if you have a cavity and a toothache and you can't go to the dentist. And we know that there are youth that are estranged from families, and they don't have that luxury of being able to seek permission for every care. So I believe the number is either 26 or 29 states already have some coverage for this. It is probably the heaviest lift out of the package, because immediately I've heard, you know, is this just for abortions? If my child leaves home to go to prom and they don't like their curfew, what happens? And so really our providers are amazing. They speak to what they do so eloquently, even better than I can. And it's important to make sure that kids in need have access to medical services. And that includes physical health, mental health, dental, vision. Just see how many things could be setbacks. Good morning. Thank you for joining.
Good morning.
I'm working on the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. Show of hands, is anyone familiar with Kratom? Okay. So Kratom is a leaf from an Indonesian plant that traditionally would be chewed or brewed for pain relief purposes. And so as we do, we take things from nature and bastardize them, make them super potent, or just not understand how they're used. And because Kratom has some opioid-type properties, it's often promoted in recovery communities as the holistic response to recovery. The biggest problem I've experienced is that people who have a propensity for addiction to opioids also can become addicted to Kratom, and it builds up to a toxicity. So there's a lot of problems. There's not a whole lot of research. There's also no regulation of processing. So we've seen it be contaminated by salmonella, and people have died as a result of that. We've seen contamination from fentanyl, and people have died as a result of that. Now we also have people who use Kratom as a holistic pain relief. I have a cousin who runs marathons, and he'd rather use Kratom than take Tylenol. So again, how do we address this issue? Some people are like, nope, we got to ban it. And I understand. There's a gentleman who was from Michigan in recovery, had moved to Florida, and he died from Kratom toxicity. It's very understandable. My biggest thing with it is restricting access to people 21 or over, making sure that it's being processed so that people aren't processing it at local, gas stations, which increases the propensity for contamination. And then labeling, making sure that people know that this is not just the healthy alternative, the natural alternative. You need to know the risks if you are going to choose to buy it and use it. So we're working on a hearing with the regulatory committee to raise awareness, because everyone I've talked to who says, I have never heard of kratom, then they go back in the community and you can't stop seeing it. It's everywhere. And most people aren't having these conversations, but even the medical community, they're starting to see it more and more. Last week, so I told you I was on insurance committee. Last week I attended the National Conference of Insurance Legislators. It's some fascinating topics. When I started insurance, I was like, stick a pin in my eye, because I can't think of anything I would enjoy less than insurance. But I went to these conferences and they're tackling very interesting topics. And one of them was catalytic converter thefts. I don't know any community that has not been touched by this. And one of the issues is it is the car part that has the most expensive metallic pieces that can be resold. And it's easily removed. And so, you know, there's some legislatures that are taking the criminalization approach. Stiffer penalties, more criminal charges attached. But they said that some communities are stamping VIN numbers on it, making sure that anyone who buys resale catalytic converters has to do a background check on that part to know that it wasn't stolen. And the well, this is more criminal, is that if someone has a whole bunch of catalytic converters and they're not new, the presumption is that they were stolen and they would treat it and approach it as such. The other topic that they tackled was gun owner insurance policies, which, you know, when I started getting involved with Giffords and some of the other ones, I was like, yeah, gun owner insurance. We take insurance on everything else. But the insurance policies, they specify, come on in, there's plenty of seats. We can pull up some more. There's a lot of nuance to how insurance is handled. And any injury that is caused because of intentional, so if someone decides they're going to go and shoot and they cause it, that's not covered by insurance. And, what's the other piece? It'll come back to me. But the general idea is most people who are injured as a result of a shooting would not be eligible. If it's suicide. So your family could not benefit from a insurance plan if you intended to inflict harm on yourself. So if you look at the amount of injuries, most of them, I think they said close to 99%, would not be eligible for insurance. Other states, thank you. Other states have taken the approach of the Attorney General's office collects a fee with every gun sold, and they create victims injury fund. So anyone who is injured as a result, it's not an insurance, it's kind of like a sin tax. We tax tobacco to fund prevention, we tax alcohol to fund prevention, we tax gambling to fund prevention, and so it's one approach to victim relief. It is budget season. I like to do some budget information because there's a lot of misconceptions about how Michigan state budget works. And I'll have to admit, I had them too, even running for office. The more you get into it, the more nitty-gritty you'll understand, the better you understand the process. You also understand the influences and at what point you can have influence over how spending is done. So the first thing that happens is all the fiscal analysis for the House, for the Senate, for the governor. They all go through and look at the spending projections, economic projections for the year, and they decide about how much does the state budget have to spend. Typically, at this point, it's about $60 billion. Like I said, it was about $66 billion with inflation, which meant we had more revenue. But there are a lot of places where it's in statute what we must spend. For education, there's statute on what we must fund. And so a lot of people think that a lot of the tax dollars we take in are discretionary spending. And that's not the case. It is a small fraction of the pie. And if anyone would be interested in me doing a town hall or a round table on economics and the state budget, I'd love to come back. I've done this last term. And as I say, high school students who are mandated to take American government are often more concerned about prom and graduation and what they're doing next. And while it's well intended that everyone graduates with a good grasp of government, as an educator and as an adult, I know that not everybody has that knowledge, and that as an educator, part of this role is being an advocate for civic engagement. And so anything I can do to facilitate that is important. In district, so we're in Lansing Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays most months of the year. That's when committees are happening. That's when sessions are happening. That's when votes are happening. It's very rare that it falls out of that. Rare occasions they'll keep us on Friday to get business done that they couldn't get over the line. But Mondays, Fridays, and honestly Saturdays and Sundays, we work in district. So it's not rare for me to be at a community conversation on a Saturday, at a community event on a Sunday. So I do say the other 4 days of the week I work in district. On those days, I answer constituent requests and correspondence along with my staff. These are our opportunities to work to develop legislative policy, take meetings virtually and in person, tour and visit district organizations and businesses. So some people are like, you only work 3 days a week. It's like 90 days a year. And that's not accurate. March is reading month. My teacher heart, my elementary teacher heart loves it because it's my excuse to go back to elementary schools. I spend most Mondays and Fridays in March visiting district schools, reading to students, talking to teachers. I've already visited Pulaski Elementary, Pinewood Elementary, and Carruthers Elementary. Friday I visit Carlson Elementary, and I'll be visiting Crescentwood Elementary. So 5 districts, 5 elementary schools, and it helps me, having been out of the classroom for over 4 years, to sit in the teacher's lounge and talk to teachers about what are they seeing. It helps me to go in and experience the classroom climates and see, what are the behavior issues? What are the resources? What are the conditions of buildings? And take those back to schools, or take that back to Lansing. It also gives me an opportunity to talk about government and leadership issues. I choose a variety of books to focus on that. And I'm pretty proud that in my community, the amount of students who can recognize and name their state representative, I could not do that in 4th grade. But when I walked into Carruthers Elementary, I've been reading to them since they were 1st grade and kindergartners. And are you Lori Stone? Are you Lori Stone? And when the 5th graders came to the Capitol, even out of context, they knew who their state legislator was. They had a good idea of what my job is in the community. And they do know that, like Sesame Street, who are the people in your neighborhood? I'm a neighbor. I'm approachable, and I'm working for my community. And so I feel like March is Reading Month is a very powerful opportunity. March is Women's History Month. Women make up half our population, and yet women are not included, equal, or recognized for many contributions we've made historically or for pay. So we have woefully inadequate pay. Women are roughly paid 82 cents on a dollar for what their male counterparts do earn. And we know for that minority populations, that can be even lower. So March is when women's paychecks catch up to their male counterparts for last, New Year's Eve. Follow me on Facebook. I give regular updates 3 to 4 times a day, week, of what I'm working on, what's going on in Lansing, where am I at, what am I doing. big issues and topics, find me. I have 3 accounts. The one you want to follow is Representative Lori Stone. Again, April Community Conversation, mark your calendar, is Saturday, April 22nd, 11 a.m. at Tim Hortons on Hoover. This information and a lot of these updates are in my monthly email, and I try to send it out before the next community conversation. So if you sign up and include an email address, we will add you to the list, so you'll get this information in writing as well. If that wasn't enough. I bring a variety of resources that are free and available to you. Some of them are booklets and brochures that are informational, including veterans benefits, how to navigate veterans affairs, tenants and landlords, empowering renters to know their rights, as well as landlords to know what they need. A new brochure is what every driver must know. If you have a new driver coming along, grab one of those. It's a great resource. Also, we've been connected with an app on for Food Finder. So United Way had informed me that 211, the #1 request for district people, is for food assistance. So you're working 40 hours a week, and you need that paycheck doesn't get you to the end of the month. And no one in this community or country should be going hungry in this day and age. There's resources. We will help connect you. I have some information on scams from Attorney General Dana Nessel. In my Financial Services Committee, they talked about the unbanked population in the community. And so there are resources. So if you're unbanked, make sure our community members know that there's a pathway to resuming that is not predatory. And that's important. For all our naturalists looking to start planning summer vacation, our campgrounds brochures are out. It's a great one to thumb through. And this is just a small fraction. We work with your local librarians to make sure they're staffed and available all throughout the year. If you see something, we can send it to you in the mail. And that's the end of my speech.